not a planned stream, and oh, I heard a double ding. Anyway, yeah, this isn't a planned stream. This isn't anything official. This is quite literally me just ranting on the spur of the moment. I just wanted to bring up a topic, maybe get some questions if anyone's awake. I know it's early in most parts of the world, other than the UK. And I just wanted to know a few things. Now, I was having a conversation with someone on Twitter, basically that started off talking about kind of my concerns with the quote unquote SJW mentality that's infecting games and how it's changing character designs and how it's changing just certain aspects of games. And I just feel like it's a bit concerning because I feel like we're beginning to see this standard creep into game designs where PR statements like the one from Blizzard regarding Overwatch was released and the one from NetherRealm regarding MKX. You know, this whole like we're trying to make realistic quote unquote female characters because we don't want to set impossible standards for women and all that. And it because the conversation I had with this person, it reached this point where they said something that I always hear people say, and like it personally, and I'm not speaking for anyone else, personally, it concerns me because it always echoes this sentiment that I just find a little bit concerning. It's the notion of over sexualization or the oversaturation of sexy characters. And I think the reason this concerns me is because what okay, let's be clear in this sense. What is the standard of sexy and who sets it? Therefore, what does over-sexualization mean and why is it bad? Is it the size of boobs? Is it the waist size of female characters? Is it how much skin they're showing? I mean, one person's objectification is another person's empowerment. So why is it even necessary to use that word when we're not necessarily saying anything other than I don't like this thing? It's a descriptive judgment versus a prescriptive one. You know, we're not prescribing a standard of beauty. We're describing our own personal gripes with the design of a video game character. And my concern is that when we're saying stuff like, you know, like when we're seeing stuff like an MKX, like the reducing the boob size and putting more clothes on the female characters as to make them more realistic and, you know, not impossible standards. What is that saying? That's basically saying the complete opposite, which is like, well, you know, sexy is kind of wrong, so let's cover them up. And or to be more precise, it's like you're taking the standard of sexy that was an MK9, right, which was, you know, fully revealing boobs hanging out and all that, to kind of more clothes on, smaller boobs, smaller waist size. And it's like, aren't we just trading one variety of sexy for another? That's not really solving anything. We're not making things more realistic because one, it's Mortal Kombat. The characters are still buff and toned and fit and much, you know, still kind of like next to unattainable for any real human being. I mean, the male characters are still hella buff, and the female characters are still of a standard that I think very few women can, you know, reasonably do, even by cosplay standards. So I don't necessarily feel like we're actually, I don't know, I don't necessarily feel like we're actually accomplishing anything with this notion. So I don't know, like I just think that it's not really a fair thing to say. And I'll give me a second. I'm going to tweet this out to anyone who might be around. Give me a second. Okay, cool. I doubt I'm going to get any viewers from this. It's way too early. And obviously, if anything, I'm just doing this because it's an easy and quick recording for my YouTube channel. I'll probably add a thumbnail later on. Probably Ivy. Why not? Dead or alive character. I don't know. All right. So the next point I wanted to make is regarding diversity. People say that okay, the issue isn't so much that, you know, sexy is bad or everyone thinks sexy is bad. It's just there's too much of it. Once again, we're using the superlative, we're using a hyperbole, we're saying there's too much. But based on what standard? Who is setting the standard? Why is it wrong? These are questions that never get asked. People constantly say that there's too many sexy characters or that they're over sexualized by design. I'm like, but who is setting the standard for what is okay, what's reasonable, and what goes over this standard and what isn't okay? And even if it does go over this magical, invisible, unwritten standard, then why should people not be allowed to enjoy that? Now, on the topic of diversity, people can and should be into different designs. We should see different types of characters in games, especially fighting games. But my question is that if diversity were all that was going to solve the problem, then you'd think it'd be solved by now, because I've said this point before in different respects, but diversity, quote unquote, is something that I feel like is a bit of not snake oil, uh, but diversity is this buzzword that people use that doesn't particularly mean or solve anything, because we say it, however, we're not actually meaning anything. Because diversity is something that exists in the sense of like there's characters with different designs and different types, but we never see this being able to, satiate people. Because if diversity would solve the problem, as I said, this wouldn't be an issue in the first place, because we have different female characters with different female character types. So why would you say that, well, we need diversity to solve the problem? Diversity in what respect? We need characters of different ages, different races, different types. Well, we have all those, and we're having even more. But then people say, but there's too many straight white males, or there's too many sexy female characters. But then I once again bring up the challenge: based on what standard, and why is this wrong? Because I feel like this question is never answered, and I feel like we need to answer this question. Otherwise, we're running circles around each other. It's okay, add diversity to games, but there is diversity in games. There isn't enough. Why isn't there enough? Well, it's bad to have too much of something, so we need more. And then we ask, well, why do we need more? So I think we're in this constant loop of asking the question and never getting any answers. And I think that if we can't do that, then how can we reasonably say diversity is what's going to solve the problem of character design in games? And I think that, yeah, diversity is good, but not diversity for its, own sake. Diversity for creativity, for interesting characters, for interesting stories. I feel like when we're just saying that, well, it's bad to have just sexy characters only there for sex appeal. We need well-written characters. I'm like, well, yes, we do, but why can't we have that variety? Like, what's wrong with having sex appeal for its own sake? Because now we're making a prescriptive judgment. Now we're saying, oh, but sex appeal is wrong. Like, you shouldn't have that there. And I'm like, but why should we be demonizing that at all? I mean, the point I was making, especially on Twitter, is that aren't we just trading some people's preferences for another by being complacent with the design of certain characters and saying that, oh no, we simply should have it's okay to have less sexy characters, it's okay to have better written characters. We're essentially sending the message that it's wrong to like certain fantasy designs. Like, let's use the example of Quiet from Metal Gear Solid 5. Obviously, the game's not even out yet, but we can still talk about it. With Quiet and Metal Gear Solid 5, people are saying that, even if they can justify it, her design is wrong because why does she need to be half naked? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, forgetting the whole it's unrealistic argument, let's address that. They say, why does Quiet need to be, half naked? Let me ask you this. What's wrong with that? Why should she be covered up? It's Kojima's creative vision to make her like that, and he has his reasons. If we cover her up, what are we solving? We're not going to solve anything. Will the character of Quiet change, or are we just going to appeal to the people who want her covered up? I really feel like that's the issue we're having here. The issue isn't so much that there's no reason for character designs, or that the character designs are inherently bad. It's people just making this position that we should change it and put more clothes on the female characters because reasons. And I feel like those reasons are never fully fleshed out. We're never told why they should do it, and it won't really change anything in the long run. Or how about Smite? When Kali, the character Kali, got changed in Smite. When they changed the character Kali, it was because of complaints that people were saying that she was too revealing. When, despite that, the fact that her character design is supposed to be like that, the designers designed her after her mythology. And Game 3 released a very interesting episode on this very thing. Yet, what concerned me is that, in the grand scheme of things, nothing else changed. Kali played the same. She acted the same. They didn't change her character to another character. She was still, Kali the assassin or whatever. My issue is that we just changed her character design just so people could be happy. To what end? Do you see what I'm saying? To what end have we changed this character's design, to put some clothes on her, made her more quote-unquote modest, to appeal to people who think she, is, as the buzzword, over-sexualized. You see what I mean? Like this is the issue I have. We're not actually solving any problems. We're not actually, creating more diversity. We're just changing things around to appeal to some people over others. And I really don't think that is actually doing anything productive whatsoever. And as a disclaimer, like to roll this back to Mortal Kombat X, right? If the PR had come out for MKX and they told me that, with MKX, we're trying to change up how we design the characters, and we're trying to harken back to its origins of kind of like, it's like a nostalgia thing, a fan thing. We're going to make the characters more down to earth instead of the kind of cartoonish clay type characters that they were in MK9. Because MK9's characters are along the lines of sort of games like, the Street Fighter 4 series, to an extent KOF 13, and Guilty Gear Zero, the 2.5D really buffed up beefy characters kind of, like that new design, this SF4 started as a trend. That's what MK9 went for to an extent. MK10 is still kind of doing that, but it's rolling it back a little bit and making the characters a little bit more packed in. And I can respect that. But when they said to me that they're doing it for the sake of realism and they want the characters to not be impossible standards for women, then I just had to kind of blink twice and say, what does that have to do with anything? Like, why should this matter? Like, this is PR, clearly, and this is PR aimed at somebody, but I think that it was also something that concerned me, because it's like, what do we actually, what statement are we making here, right? Here's the thing about when you make a PR statement directed at someone. When you say something you're changing it for a positive change, what does that imply? That the thing before the positive change was wrong. Therefore, you're implying that designs before were wrong. Can you see where the issue is there? And then by removing it, you're saying, oh, I'm sorry, this design isn't going to be here anymore, so people like you shouldn't be playing this game. And I'm not necessarily saying that's the message they're sending, or that people who do like those previous designs shouldn't be playing. My concern is still that it's just, as I said, trading one preference for another. So I don't really feel like we're accomplishing anything when we do this. I mean, and obviously you're free to give your opinion. I want to see what you guys think. But I mean, that's why I said on the topic of sexualization, I feel like it's running in circles between people giving an opinion, which comes out as a prescriptive judgment, never really backing up with any fact or anything like that. And just, we're chasing each other's tails effectively. And I've talked at length about characters like Ivy Valentine or Zero Suit Samus and how people moan about it. And I feel like, why speak in broad terms? Excuse me. If you want to tell me to my face, right? If you want to tell me to my face that I think that Ivy's character is too revealing, or I prefer characters with more clothes on, whereas I don't necessarily think that's a fair or valid judgment, because either it's, it's sex negative or it's shaming her for being, skimpy, you're perfectly fine in holding that value. That's okay if that's your opinion, or if you don't like that. I may not agree with it to an extent. I think it's unfair, but that's fine. But when this opinion goes beyond opinion and starts becoming something that a lot of people are trying to push as a fact, that skimpy clothing is objectifying, please stop on female characters, then I feel like we've crossed the line from simply making interesting criticisms of art to actually wanting to not necessarily censor it, but change it. And I think that's where the problem starts, because we're not actually creating any solutions, or we're not actually trying to appease people. We're simply trying to, like I said, trade one preference for another. In regard to fighting games, if you don't like the design of a fighting game, then either, put up with it, or don't play the characters in the game, or don't play the game. You can't hope to change something that doesn't fit to your style, and I think that it's wrong to do so. To clarify, there are tons of things I don't like in games, in fighting games, in RPGs, in FPS. There's so many things I don't like. I may voice my concerns about it, may even rant about it, but guess what? At the end of the day, it's not there for me. I am one player out of millions of players who picked up this game, and I can enjoy it for my own reasons. Not everything in the game needs to appeal to me. And I always use the example of anime in relation to games. There's so many different genres and so many different styles in anime that if you don't like one, pick another one. Why should I spend hours of my days moaning about this one character in anime I don't like when I can just watch another one? Why should I spend hours of my days moaning about a genre of anime and its stupid tropes when I can watch another one? Shoujo anime is good for the most part, in my opinion, but there's so many tropes that I personally can't stand, so I don't watch shoujo anime. I watch shonen, comedy, action, and sci-fi, right? In games, there's so many tropes of traditional RPGs I don't like. What do? I don't play traditional RPGs. I play JRPGs. I play sci-fi RPGs like Mass Effect. I play FPS. I play action games. I play platformers. I don't really like RTS. I don't really like all that stuff. Is it my right to complain about the tropes in these games and why they're stupid? Sure. Is it my right to say people shouldn't like them or we should change them because there's people like me who don't want it? No, and I feel like that's wrong because to bring it back to my very first point, we're creating a standard. Now, I don't like grinding in traditional RPGs. I'm talking like old school Final Fantasy. Would it be fair of me to say to people that there's too much grinding in these games? Grinding should be removed or grinding should be changed? No, because people like that grinding. I'll play an RPG that requires minimal to no grinding because that's something I can enjoy personally because I'm not a fan of grinding. So I might play something that doesn't require much grinding, something I can just sort of run through and maybe do a bit of leveling up on the side. People love grinding. I'm talking like, Disgaea, I'm talking, Final Fantasy VI, I'm talking Bravely Default, like if we're talking about new games and stuff like that, Dragon Quest and so on. People love that grinding system. I don't. I would much rather play Arc the Lad, where the game is more about strategy and figuring out stuff so you can get through the entire game, minimal grinding. But I wouldn't remove grinding for anyone else because I don't like it. And I feel like if that's a criticism we can say is valid and fair, why can't we apply that to something else? Because I feel like the double standard is we're giving the whole idea of female characters' designs in games this kind of elevated status where it's like everything has to be binary, black and white, right and wrong. This is objectifying, it needs to stop. This is too sexualized, we need to change it. And I think that that's not right because we're basically shaming people for their likes and their ideas while not actually explaining why it's objectively wrong. If it's just opinion, then leave it where it is as opinion. It stops there. I hope that makes sense. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that in the topics of female character depictions, and we always talk about sexualization or whatever, I feel like we're not really creating or solving anything. We're merely chasing our own tails, running in circles, talking about a concept, but we're not actually offering any solutions. We're not actually going to realistically do anything unless, in the case of some games, not all, like I may rant a lot on Twitter, but I'm not trying to say it's an epidemic. All we seem to be doing is taking one preference and replacing it with another. We're saying this standard of sexy is bad, let's put this standard of sexy in place. To use the example of Overwatch, in Overwatch, Blizzard said that they wanted to make the characters not too sexualized. And you look at the characters in Overwatch, and yeah, the female characters are pretty well dressed, right? They still, they're still kind of sexy. They still have something going on there. They're still pretty and pretty. That's funny. And you have a character like Widowmaker, who is pretty skimpy by standards, right? She is she's got a tight suit on. She's got her chest exposed. I don't know if that's going to be in her final design. Who knows, right? So that's going on right now, right? But then I sat down and I thought to myself, okay, this game is less sexualized compared to Soul Calibur, which is a fighting game, so it's not really a fair comparison because it's an FPS versus a fighting game. But that's compared to Soul Calibur. But it's more sexualized in a way than trying to think of something else, trying to think of another example, than say, I don't know, Diablo, like talking about another Blizzard series. Because Diablo characters, especially after they get their armor, are pretty much like way more covered up than some of those characters in Overwatch. Like in Overwatch, those characters show quite a bit of skin. So really, on the standard of even Blizzard games, Overwatch characters are more sexualized than Diablo characters. Shouldn't I then complain that the Overwatch characters are showing too much skin because Diablo had pretty well covered up female characters? Like, do you see the comparison there? I feel like when we create these comparisons, we're creating an invisible standard that only appeals to our sensibilities and saying that developers have to appeal to that, but we're not solving anything. So I don't really think that's fair. I think that, I mean, to give my viewpoint, right, just before anyone's confused, I think all character designs are valid, appreciated, and welcome, and developers should do it. Characters should be tall, they should be short, they should be thin, they should be fat, they should be sexy, they should be non-sexy, big boobs, big muscles, small muscles, whatever. Like, I enjoy any design as long as it's interesting and it has a purpose. Every design is valid for me. I don't demonize any design whatsoever. Right? I will gladly pick up a sexy character in a fighting game as much as I would play a non-sexy one. I would gladly play a character with D-cup boobs as much as I play an A-cup boobs one. I would gladly play a character who looks like Macho Man Randy Savage as much as I'd play a guy who looks like a janitor. I don't think any single body type is wrong, and I think that that's what we need. We need such a wide cast and a wide variety of types. In something like a fighting game, of course every character is going to look super toned and super buff, super ripped and all that, because fighting games, especially fantasy fighting games, they're not grounded in reality whatsoever, are based on really kind of eclectic designs where characters look in a variety of ways. If we're talking about a fighting game like Street Fighter, characters are world warriors from different corners of the earth, each with different kind of traditional cultural dressing and different proportions. Or if we're looking at a game like BlazBlue, the fighting game series BlazBlue, the characters are very anime inspired. So we're talking like skinny, lanky Shonen guys, voluptuous and bouncy female characters, but then also you have kind of slightly buff guys like Azrael, and you have slightly sort of skinny girls like Noelle, and so on. So you have these variety of designs in these games based on something, and really it's more close-minded to say that a character like, if we're talking about BlazBlue, a character like Lychee is wrong because of her proportions, and a character like Noelle is okay because she doesn't have them, because it's effectively saying that Noelle's standard is okay and Lychee's standard isn't. That all that does is, if we're talking real world terms, is shame women who look like Lychee and say women who look like Noelle are the okay standard. That's not fine. That's not diversity at all. We're just narrowing the type of female character designs we want by saying the sexy ones are wrong. If we're going to create a game, what we need to see isn't just a mishmash of cardboard cutout female characters who are all B cup, 5'5", and have no curves. That's not diversity. Diversity is having that cardboard cutout I talked about, then having maybe a fat woman, maybe an old woman, maybe a tall woman, maybe a short woman, a busty woman, a voluptuous woman. And so, you see what I mean? Like, we have to have these different types with interesting character designs and personalities, of course. We have to have these types for a reason. And I feel like at the moment, that's not where we're headed, when all we're doing is repeating this narrative that, oh, this design is wrong, this design is bad, because, sex appeal for its own sake is wrong. But why should it be? Some people like it, some people don't. Disclaimer, I don't for a second think that everyone should objectively like the characters in, say, Dead or Alive. I don't think that for a second. I think that a game like Dead or Alive has a very specific fan base it's aimed at, and a very specific style that only certain people can like, male and female. The chicks are fit and the guys are buff. That's what the game is. It's a bunch of ninjas, assassins, wrestlers, and hitmen all just fighting each other in completely over the top, ridiculous cinematic, scenes. That's not for everyone. If you don't like characters who are, wearing next to nothing, both male and female, wearing next to nothing all the time, as in most fighting games, it's not for you. If you don't like over the top Michael Bay explosions during your fighting games, it's not for you. If you don't like, and this is a funny one, if you don't like the fact that the character Tina, for no reason in particular, has a second neutral animation where she just sort of starts bouncing around, you can see her bits jiggling, it's not for you. And it doesn't have to be, because guess what? Not everything has to be created to appeal to everyone. You can't please everyone with the design of something, and it doesn't have to be. If your preferences for designs are so deeply entrenched in feeling like a certain character bothers you, that's okay. You don't need to play it. You can share that opinion. You can write a blog. You can write on your website. That's fine. But know where your opinion ends. know where to hold your boundaries and say that, but this is just how I feel, and I'm not shaming other people for liking this, nor am I saying developers aren't free to create this. You can then say, I would like to see more games with more variety types, and hopefully a type I would like. Like, for example, a really fair opinion would be to say, like, if we're talking fighting games, let's just say Soul Calibur, right? Like, oh, the Soul Calibur female characters are diverse to an extent, but the predominant body type is sort of like the busty, tall seductress. Perhaps it'd be interesting to see more body types like sort of what's her name, Talim, Talim or Hild, characters who aren't really voluptuous and curvy. It'd be nice to see more stuff like that because I appreciate characters like that. Not that there's anything wrong with sexy characters like Ivy and Sophitia. That's a fair criticism. I would say that, oh, that's really good. I see what you mean. Like, mind you, I don't play either Ivy or Talim, or I don't play the majority of the female characters in Soul Calibur, but that's just me. But I appreciate their designs. I've always liked their designs. And I would say that's a fair criticism. Be like, okay, yeah, fair enough. I agree. Like, it would be interesting to see a character type that I like. I mean, mind you, there are very few in fighting games. I don't necessarily have a type, quote unquote, but my preferred type of female character is kind of like the tall, sexy gunslinger, kind of, dark and mysterious, like that kind of female character, like like Revy from Black Lagoon, like that kind of character. But I don't see that in games all that often, and when I do, it's really cool, right? So that's what I'd like to see. But instead of saying that something kind of skewed, like, oh, I hate the boring, you know, I love justice kind of prissy female characters in games. Where are the badasses at? Why can't we have more of that? I wouldn't shame anyone for liking a certain character type. I would just want to see something that appeals to me. So if there's a wide, I mean, like, think of a game like League of Legends, where despite it being a competitive game, there's a massive cast of characters with really deep and interesting lore, good voice acting, and different personality types. So there's literally so many interesting, and there's a massive range of characters in League of Legends for anyone to pick up and enjoy. You can have the kind of cute kawaii desu type, and you can have the bold mature woman type, and you can have the more humble one, you can have the childish one, you can have all of that. The same with male characters. You can have the gruff one, you can have the one who's all like justice this, justice that. You can have these different characters. To me, that's diversity. Diversity is having all types, not just some that fit a specific narrative or specific standard. Having all types mix in the pot, because that's what we are as human beings. I'm not trying to be too meta for you at the moment, but as human beings, that's how we operate. Human beings are a boiling pot of diversity. We're different people of different sizes, cultures, nationalities, languages, races, etc. Right? It would be a shame if we lost that in our games too, because some people, and every time they see a female character with a D cup or a female character, wearing a bikini or whatever, I feel like we're going to lose that diversity if all we're doing is saying that diversity means lowering boob sizes because reasons. I feel like that's besides the point. Is there anything wrong with redesigning female characters to be wearing more clothes or having smaller boob sizes? Of course not. But why should it be done in the first place? Why does it have to be changed at all? And if the reason we're changing is because we, quote unquote, don't want to offend people, that's concerning. So overall, I mean, to bring this to a head, I don't want to rant for too long. As I said, this is just a rant. This isn't an actual like stream or anything. I just want to know. I just want to say, sorry, that on the topic of oversexualization in games, I feel like that we're too often trying to set an invisible standard for what counts as an okay female character, and that is wrong. It's completely wrong. It is completely restrictive, and it's completely unfair to game designers and artists. If you hold an opinion that you don't like a certain aspect of a female character or a certain design, great. You can act on that opinion, you can write that opinion, you can tell other people about that opinion. All of these things are fine, A-okay. I support that. But your opinion is just that, an opinion. It is not fact. It is not unfalsifiable research. It is just your way of looking at something. And if someone challenges you on that, well, be prepared to answer them and say, "Oh, that's just how I feel. Like, you can like it if you want. I'm a do me, you do you." That's good. But saying that your opinion is the way things should be and something should change based on that, that's where the problem starts. I don't think there will ever be a day where people will openly accept a game like Soul Calibur or DOA for its female characters. I don't see that. And I don't want to see that because I know that that's not something for everyone. Lowest common denominator entertainment is the most inoffensive, safest possible thing. No bad jokes, no sexy characters, no exclusive mentality, no sort of treehouse mentality. That's the kind of thing that appeals to everyone. Specific entertainment for specific tastes, that's a whole thing entirely. If we're talking movies, then some people might prefer to watch a Transformers. Some people might prefer to watch a chick flick or a rom-com or something like that. If we're talking games, some people want a Call of Duty, some people want a Minecraft, some people want a Dead or Alive, some people want a League of Legends. Everyone's different, and to move forward in the industry, we need to cater to that taste even more. We need to get more people into more things. We need more Gone Homes. I mean, I may not agree with it, but we need more Gone Homes, right? We need more games like that. We need more walking simulators, I guess. But we also need more Alien Isolations. We need more Dragon Age Inquisitions. We need more Shadow of Mordors. We need more everything, right? That's what we need. And with that comes interesting characters and interesting designs. And with that comes the diversity we need. Diversity through natural means, not forced diversity based on shaming people's lack of certain standards of beauty, but diversity through interesting game design and through interesting creative processes that can appeal to different people. Thereby, I can enjoy my DOA in my League of Legends, and you can enjoy your Gone Home and Depression Quest, and we can both coexist on this planet together. No problem. So, I mean, that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to know what you guys think. Obviously, leave a comment, tweet me on @NotYourShield. Just let me know how you think about the topic of over-sexualization, quote unquote, in games, and what you think games should do to increase diversity. Like, all opinions are welcome, all discussion is allowed, comments are open, I'll never censor anything. So yeah, that's just it. Let me know. Thank you.